If you're trying to run Android apps on your PC, there's a very high chance you've already come across these two names, BlueStacks and the Android Studio Emulator. But here's the big question. Which one is actually better in 2026? Which emulator gives better performance? Which one launches faster? Which one uses less RAM and CPU power? And most importantly, which one should you actually use based on your PC specifications and what you want to do? Because a lot of people install an emulator without understanding the difference between them. Then later, they complain about lag, freezing, slow boot times, high RAM usage, or poor gaming performance. And honestly, choosing the wrong emulator for your needs can completely ruin your experience, especially if you're using a low-end PC. So in this video, we're going to do a real comparison between Android Studio Emulator and BlueStacks. Not just based on marketing claims, but based on actual performance and real-world usage. We'll compare them side by side in multiple categories, including startup and boot speed, RAM and CPU usage, overall smoothness, gaming performance, app compatibility, user experience, and which emulator performs better on weaker hardware. We'll also talk about something very important that most people ignore. Hello everyone, welcome back to All PC Geek. Let's get started. First, let's understand what these emulators are actually designed for. Let's start with BlueStacks. BlueStacks is mainly built for casual users and mobile gamers. Its biggest focus is performance, smooth gameplay, ease of use, and app accessibility. The moment you install it, it already feels like a consumer-friendly platform. You can quickly sign into Google Play Store, download apps, launch games, customize controls, and start using Android apps almost immediately. It also includes gaming-focused features like keyboard mapping, multi-instance support, FPS optimization, and performance modes. That's why BlueStacks became so popular among gamers and general users. Now on the other side, we have Android Studio Emulator. This emulator is completely different. It's mainly designed for developers. Its primary purpose is app development, debugging, testing, and accurate Android simulation. Instead of focusing on gaming performance, it focuses on creating a realistic Android testing environment. Developers can simulate different Android phones, Android versions, screen sizes, hardware profiles, and network conditions. This makes it extremely useful for testing applications before releasing them. But because of that, it can also be much heavier on system resources. So right away, you can already see that these two emulators are targeting different types of users. One is focused on consumers and gaming. The other is focused on development and testing. But today, we're not just talking about purpose, we're testing actual performance. So let's begin with one of the most important things users notice immediately, startup speed. Because nobody wants an emulator that takes forever to open. First, I'm going to launch BlueStacks. As you can see, it starts relatively quickly and loads directly into the Android home screen. The interface feels responsive almost immediately after launch. Navigation is smooth, and apps become accessible very quickly. Now let's compare that with Android Studio Emulator. I'll launch the virtual Android device now. And right away, you can notice something important. It takes longer to fully boot. That's because Android Studio Emulator is loading a complete virtual Android environment designed for development and device simulation. It's doing much more in the background compared to BlueStacks. So naturally, startup time is usually slower, especially on low-end PCs. And if your system has limited RAM or a weaker processor, the difference becomes even more noticeable. So based on startup speed alone, BlueStacks clearly takes the lead. Now let's talk about one of the most important things for most users, gaming performance. Because this is where the difference between these two emulators becomes very clear. First, let's test gaming on Android Studio Emulator. I'm going to launch a game now. As you can see, the gameplay is not very smooth. You may notice lag, frame drops, slower loading times, and delayed response during movement. And there's a reason for that. Android Studio Emulator was mainly designed for developers, not gamers. Its primary purpose is app testing, debugging, and simulating real Android devices. Because of this, it uses more system resources for virtualization and development processes instead of focusing on gaming optimization. Another issue is optimization. Most mobile games are not optimized for Android Studio Emulator, which can cause unstable performance, especially on low-end PCs. So, while games can still run on it, the experience usually won't feel smooth compared to gaming-focused emulators. Now let's compare that with BlueStacks. I'll launch the same game on BlueStacks. Immediately, you can notice the difference. The gameplay feels smoother, faster, and more responsive. Animations load better, controls react quickly, and overall performance feels more stable. The reason is simple. BlueStacks is specifically optimized for gaming. It includes features like keyboard mapping, performance modes, GPU acceleration, and better resource management. Instead of focusing on development tools, it focuses on delivering better gaming performance. That's why games usually run much better on BlueStacks, especially on low-end or mid-range PCs. So for gaming performance, BlueStacks clearly wins. Now let's talk about development and testing. This is where Android Studio Emulator becomes very powerful. It provides a more accurate Android environment for developers. You can simulate different Android devices, screen sizes, Android versions, and even test network conditions. It also includes advanced debugging tools that developers need for testing applications properly. BlueStacks cannot fully provide this level of testing accuracy. So for app development and professional testing, Android Studio Emulator is the better option. Now let's talk about ease of use. BlueStacks is very beginner-friendly. You simply install it, sign into Google Play Store, and start downloading apps immediately. The interface is simple and easy to understand. Android Studio Emulator is much more technical. You need to install Android Studio, download SDK files, create virtual devices, and configure settings manually. For beginners, this can feel complicated. So in terms of simplicity and ease of use, BlueStacks is much easier. Now, let's summarize everything. If you want better gaming performance, faster speed, and smoother experience on low-end PCs, BlueStacks is the better choice. But if you are a developer and need accurate Android testing tools, Android Studio Emulator is the better option. So the best emulator really depends on your needs. Let me know in the comments which emulator you prefer. And if you want, I can also make a full optimization guide for both emulators. If this video helped you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more tech videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.